Welcome to Born to be a Sports Agent, where I deliver legal and contract insight for sports professionals navigating hiring, firing, injury, and representation. Hi, everyone. This is Jill Baxter, and today on Born to be a Sports Agent, my students are going to talk about the Pavia case. There currently are 41 cases out there on this issue of eligibility and whether college students should be able to get years back and exclude their junior college playing time. So I'm going to let them start. There's a lot of information, and I really think this is going to be valuable and amazing.
Hi, so our group is called Beau Elite Sports Law, and my name is Solina, and then I'll quickly introduce my other students, classmates, Gary and Brian. And today we were given a scenario, and so we're going to go over the scenario we were given, apply it to Pavia, go over for, against, and the school's position, and what we would potentially give legal advice on. So the scenario is as follows. We have a player, he's played 2 years in junior college. Freshman year, he transfers to a D1 school. He plays, then he gets hurt, he redshirts. Third year, he plays a senior year, starts, he has a good season. He's applying to the compliance department for another year of eligibility. With this scenario in mind, we were tasked under the Pavia case, do we think that he can get another year of eligibility? What arguments would be made, and what arguments school will be made, and what arguments NCAA is going to make. So I'm going to pass this on to Brian, and he's going to discuss the Pavia case because that will be in regards to influence our legal advice to this scenario.
So a quick little background on Diego Pavia. Diego is a football player from the state of New Mexico. He was a 3-star athlete in high school, went to a high school called Volcano Valley, which was a 6A school, was a really good athlete, and his senior year led his football team to the 6A state championship semifinal. And even with all those accolades, he still did not receive a single Division I offer to play football. So in 2020, Diego took his talents to a junior college, the New Mexico Military Institute. And then in 2020, COVID happened. And so this is really the genesis of a lot of these arguments. Was the NCAA gave a blanket rule in 2020 for COVID, allowing pretty much any student to either transfer anywhere, but also gain an extra year of eligibility. And that included everything from the NCAA. Diego played 2 years at junior college, and in 2021, he actually won the championship for the New Mexico JUCO team. He then took his talents to New Mexico State. He had a pretty mediocre career at New Mexico State, caught fire in his second year, and ended up playing a bowl game. His offensive coordinator at the time transferred to a school called Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt is an SEC school, quite an upgrade from New Mexico State.
It was head coach went to Vanderbilt.
Head coach and offensive coordinator, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And if you know anything about Vanderbilt football, they haven't had a decent quarterback since Jay Cutler, which was a long time ago. And so Diego took that opportunity to go to Vanderbilt. And in 2024, to a lot of people's surprise, he had a breakout season, ended up upsetting the number 1 team, which was Alabama at the time. And the issue for Diego at this time was he had used his eligibility, which is the main point of a lot of this argument, which is the 4-season rule the NCAA puts together. So you're allowed to play 4 years total in the NCAA. So
you have 5 years to play 4.
5 years to play 4.
Yeah,
so he
red shirt or whatever.
2 years in JUCO, the 2 years in New Mexico. He played the year at Vanderbilt. And so he, at that time, filed an injunction to give him 1 more year of eligibility. The federal judge granted this preliminary injunction, and the main argument for the injunction was the Sherman Act. So Diego's argument was that he, in essence, should have the equal opportunity to make the same kind of money in the NIL that all other 4-year NCAA players have that opportunity. He got to play that extra year, and Diego Pavia actually took Vanderbilt to the football football playoffs and was a runner-up in the Heisman Trophy ceremony. NCAA actually appealed this injunction. The NCAA lost, really a moot point at that point because the season had already started. The NCAA actually caved in. And so then at that point, Diego Pavia has now petitioned for a 6th year, and he has filed a class action suit against the NCAA. There's a few other players that have joined in on that, and that's really where the case stands today. And so the class action is really targeting 3 bylaws: that 4-season rule, the JUCO counting rule, which is the 2 years of JUCO counting towards the 4 years of football, and then also the 3-year transfer limit, which really caps JUCO transfer to 3 years. So that's where it stands today. And so really the NCAA in all of this has a few different arguments, 3 to be exact. The first one is the JUCO rules. It's a legitimate rule. It's been in place for a long time, and it's worked. If it's not broke, don't try to fix it. It's kept standards in place and really helped the JUCO program be an opportunity for kids to play football, and really kind of keeping away from a semi-football league. The second argument is really the JUCO rule promotes competitive balance and really prevents manipulation. We allow students to play 6 years of football. Potentially, you're going to have powerhouse schools that have deep pockets, kind of using these JUCO schools as, I don't know, so stockpile older players, kind of have a minor league system with some of these JUCO schools. And really, if you get rid of this JUCO rule, you're going to destabilize the competitive balance that all conferences have. And so the idea with the NCAA is to make all schools have some sort of competitive agreement. And so if this JUCO rule gets changed, you're going to have the larger schools with the deeper pockets receiving a bigger benefit. And then really a third argument is something that we've talked about on these other podcasts, which is the Texas redshirt rule or Texas redshirt kind of phenomenon. So a lot of parents are pulling their students either in kindergarten, pre-K, I guess the Super 8.
The Super 8, 8th graders.
So you're keeping these kids back a year. And in essence, most of us know that boys mature slower. And so you give these boys an opportunity for their bodies to mature more opportunity in the weight room. And so you can have a big age difference, right? Starting senior year of high school. And so for myself, I graduated 17 years old, and 17 to 19 is a huge difference in terms of maturation, body development. And so then potentially if you take, you have that JUCO, or you have that 19-year-old football player that his parents have been working towards and kind of prepping for a football career, putting them in a 2-year JUCO program to even get bigger, get built more, develop his skills. You then potentially have a 21-year-old freshman playing against an 18-year-old, 4-star, 5-star recruit that didn't go the JUCO route, that went the traditional NIL route, got a big offer. And if you're a 5-star, 4-star recruit, you're going to play as a freshman. And so you have this big age discrepancy that's already happening. And with the big money from the NIL pouring in, I think you're going to see this phenomenon happening even more. And so you're going to see even more parents keeping their sons back. And so I think those are pretty much 3 great arguments that the NCAA can make. You also have the opinion of the 6th Circuit, which dismissed the NCAA appeal, but for the most part, the opinion really just stated that the courts should stay out of NCAA rules. And
Oh, do you think that's why the judge ruled that way?
Yeah, no, it said in his concurrence that, for the most part, the judicial system is really for legal matters, and they really want to keep that separation of powers. And so, yeah, You also made a comment about the Sherman Act, where the Sherman Act, the main purpose of that is equality for opportunity to make money. And so keeping the JUCO in place doesn't keep the opportunity away from anyone, just kind of a shorter duration. And so, the idea for the judicial branch isn't really to make new laws, but kind of keep it place. And so I think those three factors, the NCAA has some really good arguments. So I'm going to pass the mic to my friend Gary here.
Okay. Gary, are you going to be advocating for the student?
Yes, I'm going to be advocating for the student.
Okay.
Essentially, the student in this hypothetical is going to make
Yes.
a lot of similar arguments that Pavia in this case.
Yes.
Well,
That's why I gave you that scenario.
right.
It's 2 years at JC, transfer to Division One,
Exactly.
maybe a medical year, and then played a year.
Pavia
So they played 2 years, even though they were at a college for 3 years, but they had one red shirt as a medical red shirt.
and that red shirt allowed them to extend the time, also allowed them to get bigger and stronger.
Right.
So Pavia, as Ryan had mentioned earlier, spent a year at the New Mexico Military Institute, which is a junior college. Then he transferred over for 2 years to Mexico State and eventually went over to Vanderbilt University. And we're saying that the student's going to make very similar arguments. So essentially what Pavia wants to argue is that he wants to maintain the status quo with grant eligibility and that JUCO rules should not apply, allowing him to play for a longer time. So what Pavia is arguing is that NCAA rules are a violation of the Sherman Anti-Trust Act, which essentially protects fair trade by preventing monopolies. So the Sherman Anti-Trust Act does not prohibit every restrained trade, only the ones that are unreasonable. So in this case, allowing him to continue to play will still be profitable for the school. Essentially, it would be unreasonable to limit athletes' eligibility into the college football level, and it would be unreasonable to equate JUCO's eligibility to the NCAA when name, image, and likeness opportunities are only available at the NCAA level. Name, image, and likeness money only offers players exposures for endorsements and off-field work opportunities later on. So the opportunities that Pavia and our student in this hypothetical, what they would receive, would only be limited to NJCAA and not the typical NCAA standard. That's the
Only limited to what?
the Junior College Association.
Okay.
So Pavia and the student will still get to play the sport that they really enjoy, that they're passionate about. They take more time to get bigger, stronger, and faster, and be with their peers. Doesn't harm anybody. The NCAA will argue that it wants to protect future athletes, and Pavia, and our hypothetical student, will say that we're doing exactly that by not counting the JUCO years, allowing them to play longer and to segue into professional level and getting those NIL opportunities later on down the line. And essentially, the NCAA will say that this is restricting the economic opportunity in the college athletics marketplace, but essentially the pro athletic marketplace later on down the line is so much more lucrative and beneficial to student athletes in the long run. I'm going to talk about a little bit of divisions and opportunities now also. So if Pavia were to win, the JUCO seasons would not count towards the college, meaning that Diego Pavia can play another year of college football if he wants to.
Right.
So the athletes are arguing that the time in junior college should not count against the time that they're allowed to play in the NCAA Division I football, because they do not have the same opportunities to profit from the name, image, and likeness of junior college, and therefore it's not unreasonably restricting them from trade or competition. JUCO doesn't allow for meaningful opportunities, the NCAA does, and preventing the extra year could actually be discriminatory in the application for future students coming in. JUCOs are essentially a stepping stone for low-income students and first-generation students to receive a higher education and blaze career opportunities for themselves and their families later on down the line. This rule could be penalizing them. It can have a negative effect on the student who chooses to do the transfer pathway from junior college to the NCAA college. And it's essentially setting up disadvantaged students for a lucrative career later on down the line. And if there is, so opponents may say that there's an unfair advantage in the age gaps if they want to wait to apply to college, but we can tell those students to wait maybe a year for training, eating protein, getting stronger so that they can get accepted at a competitive college, and they'll be better prepared for the sport and for NIL opportunities later on down the line. Essentially, the NCAA waives the injunction allowing Pavia to play later on. They argued that the injunction was unnecessary, while the NCAA argued that the injunction was necessary. And Pavia maintained that the JUCO rule violated antitrust law by restraining competition among athletes at schools. Pavia insisted that appellate review would influence the court of his broader lawsuit, which sought to extend eligibility in 2026. The NCAA countered that, allowing the injunction to stand, and they were worried that it can bolden further challenges to its rules. Ultimately, both the NCAA and Pavia wanted to claim that their disputes fell into the narrow exception for issues capable of repetition yet evading review. In the end, Pavia won the injunction,
Okay.
And by the blanket waiver, and he was allowed to continue playing. And
Okay, so the blanket waiver.
Mhm.
Should the blanket waiver, they then applied it to anybody in his situation last year.
Correct.
Okay. Do you think that blanket waiver should be put in effect for this year?
We're saying that it should be put into effect this year also, because it would put the student, the hypothetical student,
Yeah.
on a pathway that would give them NIL opportunities later on down the line. This student may be from a disadvantaged background, or he may be a first generation student. So it's setting him up for greater opportunities in the long run.
Let's say he's not.
Well, regardless of that, he would still be surrounded by football players that share his passion and share his love for the sport also. So he would be benefiting in either way. And he's staying in school. He's doing something productive.
Well, you could also be getting your master's. See, some of them you can be getting your master's degree.
That also.
They could be in the middle of their master's degree.
Yeah, and it's exposing him to a network of people who are equally motivated as he would. So it should still be allowed to pass in that sense. So in the meantime, he can get by college scholarships, and nobody would suffer any adverse financial damages. So we're arguing that eligibility should be that those years should not be included to allow them to play longer.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pass it on to Solina, who's gonna discuss the third portion.
Okay, so school's position, some arguments we have for that is that one
For what? Who are you arguing for?
that would make it against keeping it. I'm just trying to summarize it.
Okay.
At the school's position.
Okay.
So the school would argue that the eligibility rules preserve scholarships,
Uh-huh.
and that also they give a fair opportunity for incoming athletes.
For incoming athletes?
Yes. So there's not like a stockpile.
Okay. Well, they can't stockpile them. You can only have 105 in football.
Oh, okay. Well, that's still a lot. I mean, wait.
No, I know, but so when you're talking about the scholarships, what do you mean?
Don't you have okay, I'm learning about
I know
sports.
that. That's why I want clarity, because this is on a podcast and I don't.
Oh, okay. So from the school, they have a certain amount of money that they're going to give to these students.
They're going to have certain scholarships
Yes.
amounts for each sport. Each sport has certain scholarships. Basketball has a different amount than football, and football has a different amount than softball, and it's all different. Baseball is different than football. They all have a certain amount of scholarships each year, and you can't go over that. So,
Okay.
so I'm not quite sure where you're going with the argument. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, well then scratch that argument right now.
Okay. Why? What was going to be your argument?
Well, I was under the impression that they hold that amount of whatever scholarship for that individual until they make their decision on moving elsewhere or staying.
Yeah, no. What's going on right now, which is really difficult, is the kids who have applied under the eligibility rule, under the Pavia case, are sitting waiting. These are football players. They're waiting because they don't know, am I going into the NFL or trying to pursue that? Or am I getting another year of eligibility? That's what Pavia's situation is. Am I going to play another year at Vanderbilt, or am I getting ready for the NFL draft? Okay. Because if they sign with an NFL agent, an SRA, a standard representation agreement, they will not be able to play for another year, because you then mess up your eligibility. Okay. So you can't do that. You can sign with an agent that does NIL work for you, but you can't sign with somebody who is going to represent you in the NFL draft. So right now, if they applied, they are sitting there waiting for a response. Well, it's basketball season right now. So the basketball players who are applying for an extra year have priority over the football players. Now, the other issue is the portal's going on. So the portal just opened. And I think the portal opens. Jimmy, does the portal open in 2 weeks? Jimmy, do you know if the portal opens in 2 weeks, closes in 2 weeks? It started last Friday and it closes in like 3 weeks. So if they do get granted eligibility and they don't want to stay at the school where they are, they won't be in time to get into the portal. So these decisions need to be made. Okay. The process is you have to apply through your compliance department at your school and have them submit paperwork asking for another year of eligibility. And now what they're all doing is they're waiting for the NCAA to respond. And they haven't responded yet. Okay. So until they respond, the player, at least in football and even basketball, doesn't know whether he or she can play. So the scholarship part, and this is an issue also. Each team only has so many scholarships, so they don't know, do I go get another player in the portal for this position, or is this person getting to come back? So it is kind of messing with things. Yes, Jimmy.
For all players in the FBS and FCS levels, it is closing on January 16th. However, for those involved in bowl games and postseason runs, it will expand until the 24th.
Okay.
I'm unsure of how that affects the portal for D2 and D3 programs, however.
About the what?
The D2 and D3 programs.
Well, they're another group that has challenged under the Pavia case that they don't want their D2 rules to count because they didn't have an opportunity to make NIL money. There's cases out there on that too. So I just want to be clear with before, whatever you were thinking your argument is, that's what's going on right now currently, which is why there's just a lot of chaos because nobody knows whether these players are going to be able to play or not. And how long can a team save a spot? And how long, you just don't know if they don't respond. Hopefully they respond quickly, but that's not what I'm finding is happening. Okay, so what else were you going to talk about?
My last point